I also shared with Ministry and Oversight, I don't feel worthy to do this, but I hope I can do it. I have a message, and two things that I hope you get out of it is we have a God of hope. If you don't know that hope, I pray that you get that hope, because it saved me. And the other thing I want you to know is God has the power today, just like he did in these stories. He has the power to interact with you right here on this earth, to give you that hope, to stir your heart. And if you don't believe it, I pray that it happens during this service today. And don't be afraid to show it either. But God has the power. If he can part the sea for Moses, if he can take Abraham up on a mountain, that same God can work today in us. We just have to be willing to listen and obey. And don't be afraid to take a leap of faith. He has the power. Some of you know me. You've known me all my life. Some of you have. And again, like I said, I have a few Bible verses picked out, but I'll try not to tarry too long. But I started in my late teens planning my whole life out. And as a teenager, I had everything planned out. I was going to finish high school. I was going to go to college. Some of you that were in the band with me, you can probably remember that determination about me. I was going to have a career. I was going to make a six-figure income. And I was moving on in life. Don't need a thing. And I know that kind of sounds corny, but that's where I was at. I had several events happen in my life. Some of you know about some of these events. I had a middle brother that was mentally retarded from birth, and he had a stroke when I had just gotten my license. I mean, just gotten my license. And for whatever reason, God had a reason. He let him live. He should have died. All the doctors said he should have died, but he didn't. And they said the fact that he didn't die, he won't live very long. That's what the doctors told my parents. And I'm here to tell you he's alive and well today. And I have breakfast with him on Saturday mornings. Some of you know that about me. But my dad gave me the keys to his brand new car. And he said, your mother and I have got to go to Indianapolis and stay with your brother. You stay here and take care of the house and take care of your baby brother, who is 10 years younger than I am. So at that time, he was 6. And my mother called the schools, and they told the schools what was going on. And I would be late to class because I had to take my 6-year-old brother to kindergarten and first grade. I had to pay the bills. My dad would leave money for me on the table, but they were gone, and there I was. And I'd only had my license about a week. And so I was kind of put in that position right up front. But God decided to let Randall live. That's my brother, and he is alive today. I know it talks in the Bible, Luke 1:18, in our Sunday school lesson, Zechariah had an experience with an angel. I, too, have had an experience, I believe, with an angel. I tried my best to touch the angel. I jumped up off the ground trying to touch the angel. And I could not touch the angel. He stayed right with me. I can't explain it. It was there, and it was very real to me. And I believe that was an encounter at that point. I also had two grandmothers that were very involved in their church. They were involved in what is known as the Old Regular Baptist Church. If you're familiar with any of those churches, they're a fire and brimstone type church. They can get kind of loud when you go to those services. But it's all in the Holy Spirit when you go to those services. If it's a genuine, it's in the Spirit of God. And I can remember to this day that my grandma Lowe, my dad's mother, who was not a very smart woman, a fancy woman, nothing. She never went to school, stood out in the front yard in front of me one day, and she said, "The Christian life is the best life you'll ever live. And I pray that you find it." Because she said, "You'll never regret." And she told me I'd never regretted living for the Lord. And she was very upfront about it. Now remember, I just got my license through all these events. There was several events happened right there real close together, right? So I graduated from high school shortly after that. Started attending college. Went to IU East because I had been offered a scholarship with one of the local manufacturing companies in Winchester. And that scholarship was going to pay for about a third or 40% of my education. And so I started going to school. I should say it was going to pay that much if I went to IU East. And so I started attending college. I had taken classes throughout the day, and the company that had given me the scholarship offered me a summer job. So I thought, I can handle this. I can do the summer job and work. And so I did that, and it come time for, I was between semesters. I was going to start my fall semester. Again, here's my determination. I went as soon as I could. I started the summer, took a class. And they come to me, and they knew I was going to school, and they said, "We would like for you to work for us full time. Would you be willing to work full time and go to school?" And they said, "If you will, we'll pay for all your school. You won't owe anything." So at the time I was dating a lady that I thought a lot of, and was doing all these things, and it all sounds real good, doesn't it? Who could ask for more? But there was something I didn't have, and I knew it. And I didn't know, I could not put my finger on it. And some people say, well, you was searching. And other people say, well, you didn't know what you didn't know. And there's all kinds of terms for it. But my character, I was determined I was going to keep on going and doing this. I thought to myself, not everybody gets an opportunity like this in life, and I'm going to do it. And so I kept on going. My determination drove me into the ground to the point that it was a very bad situation for me. And the lady that I was dating through this process ended up becoming my wife, which I'm not sure why, but she did. She's sitting in the back of the room now. But those of you that know me, you know what I'm talking about with that determination. I ended up having a daughter that had the same determination, and I got to relive it all again. And it about killed my wife because she did it twice. And we think I've got a grandson that's going to be the same way, but we'll see about that one. But anyway, you get the gist of where I'm at. I'm just driving myself in the ground because I don't know what I don't know. I don't have it yet. I've had some encounters. Had a really good example. My brother should have died and he didn't. All because of God decided to let him live. Should have known, shouldn't I? I should have set me down in that chair knowing that. But anyway, I kept going. I thought, well, I'm doing pretty well. I'm married. We bought a house. It's time to buy a new car. It's time to get a new job. Even though they've done all this for me, I wanted a new job. Then I got to the point where I need a new town. Can't stay in Winchester anymore. I went real far. I went to Portland. You know. But there was one day that I was driving back home, and I'll never forget that night. It was a dark, rainy night, and it's a wonder I didn't run off the road or have an accident, because I got to crying so hard, and I had to just stop. And I can't even tell you for sure where I stopped. I don't even think I pulled off the road, to be honest with you, because there was a car that was coming from the side, and I had to move to let him get through. If that gives you any indication where I stopped. But I had to stop. I was to the point where if this is all that life here on earth has to offer, I'm done. I can't take it. Might as well check out right now, because I've had it. And I'm not very old, and I've not been married very long at this point. And I want to read to you in Luke, and I'm going to read to you in Matthew as well. But when I got to this point, and I had been going to church, and I should say I was going to church. It was to be with my girlfriend, who now is my wife. That's why I was going to church. I wasn't going to church to hear the message or to listen. But God got a hold of me that one night, and I don't know what it was, but I knew I had to stop. And a short time later, probably a week or so, I heard a message from a pastor, and he preached a message about what hell was like and what it would be like to spend eternity in hell. Because if you don't know, there is something after this world, and you're going to spend it eternally there. And it's your choice of where that is. And that's what this pastor did. And I think most of you know that this pastor was my father-in-law who did it. And I said I was going to read in Luke, but I meant to say I'm going to read in Matthew. I'm sorry. And if you read in Matthew, it talks about hell. And I'm going to read a couple Bible verses that was preached in this sermon that talks about hell. In verse 28, talks about, "Do not be afraid of those who can kill the body, but cannot kill the soul. Rather be afraid of the one who can destroy both the soul and the body." Who is that one? Who can destroy both your body and your soul? And if it refers back to the notes at Matthew 5:20. Excuse me. And this is one of the descriptions of hell that I remember. It says it became a sort of a perpetual burning city dump. A city dump now, bear in mind. This is where all the garbage goes. And later, a figure of that place became the final punishment. So, can you imagine that that's where they used to burn bodies? It's if you read in this part of the Bible, it's south of Jerusalem. It's a big hole in the ground, and they threw bodies in it and they burned them. Can you imagine what that smells like? And you're going to smell it forever. At least that's how I took it. And then in Revelations 21, it talks about, how many of you have heard over the years the lake of fire? In verse 21, verse 8, if I can read it without shaking too bad. But the cowardly, the unbelieving, the vile, the murderers, the sexual immoral, those who practice magic arts, the idolaters, and all the liars, their place will be in the fiery lake of burning sulfur. This is the second death. Neither one of those sound very good to spend eternity, does it? Or at least I didn't think so. When I heard that message, I had made it up in my mind that I did not want to live that life. I did not want to live an eternity that way. And I decided I was going to go to the altar and give my life. And my mother-in-law was by my side when I did that. I tell people she had been praying because of her daughter, but she prayed for my soul. She did. After that encounter, I decided that I wanted to live, and I think my father-in-law, which he was my pastor, and I know that sounds weird, but he looked down at me when I went to the altar and prayed that I wanted to live for the Lord, and I did not want to live. I did not want to live in hell. I did not want to live burning forever. I did not want to smell the sulfur forever. And it scared me, I guess you would say, enough to the fact that I needed to be saved. And I'll never forget, he looked down at me and he said, "Do you have something you want to say?" And I said, thinking back to my grandmothers, which both talked to me about God, if I could be half the Christian that they were, I'd be all right. But in all reality, and if they were still here with me on this earth today, they would tell me, "You be the Christian you're supposed to be. That's what you need to be. It isn't us. We're the way we are because of God. You're the way you are because of God. You're the way you are because you choose the way you want to live." And so, short time after that, I started attending another church, and that church was Bear Creek Friends. And I hadn't been here too long, and some of you that have been here all along the way, you know what happened and what I went through and all the different things I started doing here at the church. And because I felt the Lord saved me, and I needed to do my part. That was my conviction. And so I was asked to be a Sunday school teacher. I was doing other things. A lot of you know what all I was doing, and I enjoyed it. But I really dragged my feet on becoming a Sunday school teacher. I thought, I don't know the first thing about being a Sunday school teacher. I am not a Sunday school teacher. If I'm anything, I'm definitely not a Sunday school teacher. And a guy named Greg Henshaw, he kept talking to me about, "You need to do this." And he just wouldn't leave me alone. And, I got to, he kept talking about it. I mean, he was nice about it, don't get me wrong, but he really thought I needed to do this. And so I'd made it up in my mind, well, I'm going to go talk to his mother, because I thought a lot of Carol at that time. A lot of you know that. And I went and talked to his mother about this situation. And Carol told me, she said, "Well, the decision to whether you become a Sunday school teacher or not, that's between you and God. That's between you and the Lord. I can't tell you one thing or the other. But one thing I can tell you is that if you do become a Sunday school teacher, you'll learn a lot. You'll learn a lot about the Bible because you'll study the Bible. You'll know more about the Bible." And that was probably some very good sound advice, because that was when I got the understanding of just how powerful God is. Reading these stories, studying them. I'm still a Sunday school teacher to this day, probably by the grace of those who come to the Sunday school class. I keep telling them you need to get somebody else, but they don't. But, that was where I started learning about, God parts the sea for Moses. I've watched the 10 Commandments every Easter for all my life, so, I know that story. But when you read it out of the Bible, you get a little different perspective of it. There's a lot of other stories. One I wanted to read to you is in Isaiah 40:31. And I haven't read half the verses, which my wife's back here going, praise the Lord, he didn't read all of them. But verse 31, but those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. And they will walk and not be faint. And that is something that really hits home with me. Another one that hits home with me, and I should have read it at the beginning, but I didn't. But those of you that know me, this is my favorite verse in the Bible, and it's Romans 8:31. And it is, what then shall we say in response to this? If God is for us, who can be against us? What do you think? If God is for us, who can be against us? There isn't a power on this earth that can tell you that, is there? At least I don't think there is, and I believe it. And I started, digging into the Bible. I remember Vernon's dad, Roy. He found out that I got saved, and he said, time to read the New Testament, front to back. Just time to read it. And I started reading it because I knew Roy, and I knew who he was. And, my parents, they didn't go to church, so they didn't have a lot to give me at this point in my life. But fortunately, I had some really good sources around me. Most of you are still sitting in this room today. You've all been a part of this with me. And you've seen me grow, and you've seen me fall down, and you've seen me get back up, probably. So I'm not perfect. That's why I say I'm not worthy to be up here. But I had a peace that come over me when I decided to get saved that I just can't explain it. I've had people over the years tell me, I don't know how you don't have a heart attack or something as much as you do, and what you do and how you live, and there's something about you. That's my open door, isn't it? There is something about me. The Lord chose me one day. I think Zach said it best. He met me that night. He met me. The creator of the world met me and wanted to talk to me and said, I got some hope for you. I got something better for you. And that's what he wants to tell all of us, isn't it? If we'll just listen. And so I wanted to close and say that hope gives me something that I will never get from this earth. And that is, and a lot of you probably have it in your mouth, and you can say it along with me, but it's freedom. It gives me some freedom that the world can never give me, and never will. And God is the only one that has the power to give that to me. So I hope all of you will make the choice of God's peace in your life if you haven't already. I know I've never regretted it. It's been the best decision I've ever made. The best business deal, if you know me very well, because I am an accountant at heart. I could go on and on and on searching that I did and talking about what happened. There's several other stories. Some of you probably know those stories because you've lived along with me. But all the blessings that have come from God and what he has given me since that one rainy night. He's given me a wife. He's given me children. He's given me grandchildren that I experienced. He's given me a son-in-law. He's the recent move to Yorktown. A lot of you know that. I don't know how many of my family members have just fell over when I tell them I moved. They're just like, I can't believe I moved. And there's a reason for the move. You know, I'm not going to go into all that, but there's a reason for that. You know, I have my family, I have my friends, I have my church family. You know, my cup runneth over, and I'm so thankful that God is a part of my life. He sure doesn't need to be, but he is.